In-memory databases. They give your application this little performance kick by storing and processing data directly on RAM, random access memory. And you need one right now, at least for caching, if anything else. Introducing Amazon MemoryDB for Valkey. Picture this, it is like running Amazon MemoryDB for Redis OSS, but priced at a 30% lower. An open source powerhouse stewarded by the Linux Foundation. And guess what? Valkey is a drop-in replacement for Redis OSS. I'm gonna show you a couple of things today. Number one, we're gonna create a brand new MemoryDB for Valkey cluster. We're gonna connect to it using the Valkey CLI from a workstation, and we're gonna even build a Python application, a web application that reads and writes to this in-memory database. So let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and launch that Amazon MemoryDB for Valkey cluster. So on the Amazon MemoryDB console, you go ahead and click on clusters on the left-hand side. Click the one bright orange button that says Create Cluster, and let's get started. I'm actually going to go through the easy create process, although you can do a lot of different things like restoring it from an actual RDS snapshot, but I'm going to use the easy create because that's the simplest way to do. I'm going to use the demo configuration, the smallest one, because I don't want it to take too long of a time. So I'm going to select demo. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say, hello YouTube, YouTube cluster. There we go. You can give it an optional description, and importantly, select the engine as Valkey, because here you can choose between Redis and Valkey. So selecting Valkey here, I'm going to also create a new subnet group. This is basically a collection of subnets that are going to contain this cluster. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Hello YouTube Valkey. You can give it a description or not. I'm going to select a specific VPC I have here. I have a specific VPC defined for my Valkey stuff because this is where I'm going to run my Valkey workstation and the application later on. Selecting this and select the subnets. I only have two subnets in this VPC, so I'm going to select both of these subnets. If you have more, you may select all of them or just a few of them. This is up to you. Select that. You can enable vector search. We're not going to be focusing on vector search. That's for a future video. But you can select enable vector search, and you can only enable it at launch. So if you need a vector database, this is where you do it. Hit the big orange create button, and then you're going to have to wait like a while. So hit this, and I'll see you all in a bit. And would you look at that? It is done. It did take a while for it to launch, but it is ready for us to go to the next step and connect to it using our workstation and Valkey CLI. Okay, it's time to connect our workstation to the Valkey database. Please do note, you can only connect workstations or applications from within the same VPC. It is not intended that you connect from outside of the VPC, for example, from your laptop. So you can technically do that using a VPN, but we're not going to be doing that. Right now, I have an EC2 instance running Ubuntu, and we're going to connect to it using the Valkey CLI tool. Before we do that, let's install Valkey CLI. Do that sudo apt install Valkey tools. This will install all the stuff needed to connect to Valkey. Hit that, look at that, it's already installed. How come? Okay, let's go ahead and run Valkey CLI. Oh, it's trying to connect to localhost, but that's not what we want to do. We want to connect to the actual database. So, Control-C, and let's go ahead and find the endpoint we're going to be connecting to. Going back to Valkey, cluster endpoint, look at that, on this side. Copy this whole thing. It is the endpoint you're going to be using to connect to your cluster. Go back here, do Valkey CLI-H as host. And make sure to remove the port. You're going to do -P, which is going to be the actual port we're going to find. And most of the time, unless you've changed it, it's going to be 6379. Add a -C as a flag to connect to a cluster, so it knows how to handle the cluster connections, and --TLS, just so we can enable SSL. If this all works, boom, connected. Nice. If I do, I don't know, keys, look at that. There happens to be a key inside already. How is that possible? I'll get to that in a moment. But yes, we are connected to a database. In the next step, we're going to go ahead and actually write to this database using a Python application. This is going to create a little wonderful web application. We're going to use the Python, Redis library, and all those fun things. So let's get to that. So we're going to create a Python Flask application to show you how easy it is to hook up your web application with Amazon MemoryDB for Valkey. And let's get some data written and read to it. I'm going to go ahead and start a brand new Python project. mkdir, I'm going to call my project Flask Valkey, right? Why not? Change it to this directory, and let's create a shelf of Python virtual environments where we can install all of the things we need to do. So Python 3 and venv and venv. Basically, this is going to install or set up a virtual environment so we can work with the proper package versions and all those things. To get into this virtual environment, we're going to do source venv bin activate. If you are unable to run these commands, if you get a command not found, venv not found, all of those things, make sure to run the following commands to install those things. It's the simplest thing, just depending on your operating system, but here's an example for Ubuntu. Okay, awesome. So we are here. Let's go ahead and install a couple of packages we need. Namely, we need to do pip install Flask, which is going to be our web framework. And we're going to also install pip install Redis. Basically, we're going to be using the Redis library here to hook up to Valkey. Remember, Valkey is Redis compatible, so it just works. Okay, let's create a file here called let's set up a directory. So I'm going to do mkdir templates. We're going to actually have some index HTML files later on. I'm not going to show you how to write that one. I'm just going to copy it in. But we're going to create the templates directory, and we're going to touch app py. So we're going to be writing into the app py. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to do a bunch of imports first, and then I'm going to set up this Flask scaffolding, and then we're going to get to the Redis part, or to the Valkey part. Okay, very important. This line here, this actually imports a specific bit of the Redis library, Redis cluster, as Redis. It is important to use this one with MemoryDB because we've launched a cluster on MemoryDB. It's not a single instance. So you have to use this one to be able to successfully connect to Valkey. Okay, we have some of the basic elements of our application running. Technically, I can launch it. It's probably going to fail, probably going to miss a bunch of routes. So let's go ahead and set up some of the default stuff we need to connect. Let's actually set up the connection to the Valkey database. To do that, we're going to define two variables and then a connection string. So we're going to define the Valkey endpoint variable and the Valkey port variable, which we're going to be using inside of that connection string. Remember, the port is always 6379, unless you configured it differently. To get the Valkey endpoint, you may remember we copied it from the AWS console, so let's do that again and paste it here inside of this variable. Remove the port because we don't need that. The port is already defined inside of the port variable. Okay, let's go ahead and create the Redis client. Basically, this is going to be our connection string to Redis. I'm going to actually call it Redis client, yeah. Because we're technically using Redis, right? So Redis, we're going to actually use the Redis because we need to connect to it like this. We're using the Redis, Redis cluster connection. So Redis, and then we're going to define host, and host is the Valkey endpoint. Port is the Valkey port. We're going to also set two options here. One of them is going to be decode code responses equals true, and SSL equals true. Awesome. We are now ready to connect and use our application. So before we get into that, I'm going to create a bunch of things here. So this application is going to be a shopping cart application. One of the most common use cases for an in-memory database is, of course, kind of caching. And in this case, we're going to cache the contents of a user's shopping cart. So it just makes it so faster, so much faster, so much easier to access that data as a user. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a class for a shopping cart, all the things that we need for those things, and I'm going to come back in a second once that is written. So enjoy the speed coding, I guess. I hope you've enjoyed that coding montage and troubleshooting montage, but here's what I've done here. So I've created a little class here for a shopping cart, which is nothing too simple, nothing too complicated. It's just a shopping cart that we're used to store and retrieve data from Valkey. Couple key elements here. It's this line. It's the get redis.client.get, which is we're actually retrieving the data from Redis or Valkey, and this one is the set one where we are actually setting the data to Valkey. Simple as that. We're actually, the way you set and get the data from Valkey is just define a key. Keys in Valkey or Redis are usually just a name, column, a number. That's kind of the tradition they go for, and then you actually add some data. In this case, we're passing on a JSON object, which is all of our data about that specific element. How do we set the key? Well, we're in our index function, we're just generating a random user ID and using that as the name of the specific object we're creating. In real life, you would probably use an actual user ID or something similar to this nature. Since this is a demo, this is going to work fine. By the way, you can go and check out all of this code in the description. I've added all of those things for you. Additionally, I've added a file, templates.index.html. This is a beautiful Tailwind CSS powered HTML file, which is just a Flask template. I'm not going to go too much into it, but this is something that should, well, give your application some wonderful looks. Okay, to run this, Python app.py, that's it. Look at that, running on all addresses. We're using port 5000 in this case, but you should probably switch that to something else if you're running this in production. Let's go back to EC2. I'm gonna copy this DNS of my EC2 instance, paste it in here, port 5000. And would you like that? Valkey shopping cart march up. This, yes. I can have a thing, I can do apples and do 5, right? Boom, it's in the cart. I can do oranges. 128, add to cart. Look at that. I can do Commodores 64. Look at that, they're all in the cart. And I can start removing one by one from this thing, and they're gonna all be removed from Valkey. I'm gonna actually show you one more last thing. If I go here and I Control Z out of this, is it stopped? I think my application should be stopped. Yes, doesn't really matter. But if I go in and connect to my Valkey, let's see if I can find this command I did in the past. There is my thing here. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to connect to the database right now. If I do keys like that, you will see all of these keys available here on Valkey. Wonderful. So, and how can I get something specifically to this? Well, I can just copy this key here and do get key, and it's going to give me the data from the Commodores is 1, for example. I can do something else here like this. I think this is the bigger one. Get this, boom, look at that, apples, oranges, and Commodores. All of this data is stored now inside of a memory database that can be accessed really fast by your applications. If you want to remove the data from this thing, it's actually quite simple. Flush db, that's it. Keys, star, nothing. And there you have it, folks. A quick and dirty way to get started with using those in-memory databases. Remember, in the world of data and the cloud, speed is king. You want your applications to be writing and reading certain data really, really fast. So do not sleep on in-memory databases. And the best way to start with in-memory databases right now is to go and check out Amazon MemoryDB for Valkey. It is available right now, and it is 30% cheaper than Amazon DB for Redis OSS. And as you've seen it, it only takes like 10 clicks to launch a cluster. Give it a go. And if you're interested in more technical content, do make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you like this video, smash that like button. There's so much more things to learn, so go check out some other videos here as well. See you in the next one.